You've killed the Candida before and it came back. The sugar cravings, the bloating, the brain fog, all of it. So, what if the problem was never the Candida to begin with? So, hear me out. Candida overgrowth itself is not the issue. It's your body sending up a flare, a deeper signal that three interconnected systems have become unstable underneath. And when those systems are out of sync, Candida just fills the vacuum. Fix the systems, and the Candida stops being a problem. I'm Dr. Kenny, root cause health detective and IFM certified functional medicine practitioner, and I help patients solve this exact problem every single week. Today, I'm breaking down what I call the Candida Triangle, the three systems that determine whether Candida takes over or stays in check, and the exact order of operations that creates lasting resolution instead of temporary relief. And if this idea is already starting to click more than what you've been told before, go ahead and hit that like button. It helps get this information out to people who really need it. So let's start here. Candida isn't your enemy, and here's why. It's really a messenger. Your body sends up these flares when the right conditions show up, and Candida exploits that opportunity, basically. Candida actually lives in our healthy guts, on our skin. We all have it, and we have an intricate relationship with it. The trouble starts when the environment favors its invasive behaviors. Think of it like this. Imagine a leak behind your kitchen wall. You can bleach the mold that results 100 times, but if you don't fix the broken pipe behind the wall, the mold's just going to return in the next week or month. You're not failing to bleach hard enough, the leak just hasn't stopped, and the same thing can be applied to Candida. The knee-jerk reaction is often to match the Candida with an antifungal, whether that is a drug or an herbal or natural alternative. So it's the same story, you just repeat and often relapse. If we simply go after the bug rather than treating the terrain itself, we're just repeating the same mistakes over and over again and chasing symptoms. And when our systems are out of balance, you don't just get one symptom, you get a cluster. Sugar cravings, bloating, headaches, brain fog, skin issues, weight gain. The list really is endless when it comes to Candida. And here's a key insight. All of those can be traced back to one of the root disturbances in what I call the Candida Triangle. So let's dive into this framework. This Candida Triangle represents these three interconnected systems that are deeply intertwined. Each one feeds the others and relies on the others for optimal function. If you miss one of them, the whole system can fall apart, and that's where Candida has the opportunity to overgrow. So the first node in this Candida triangle is microbiome resilience. This is the core, the foundation in many ways. Diversity is super important when it comes to microbiome resilience, as well as having enough specific keystone species, or those that impart specific benefits on the body, not just the gut, but systems wide. Having enough of these good bacteria keep Candida in its yeast form, which is non-invasive. That's one of the most important parts. When the real estate in your gut, however, becomes empty, or some of the good bugs move out or get affected by antibiotics, for instance, or an ultra-processed diet, infections, chronic stress, whether it's perceived or not, Candida has the opportunity to move in because there is vacant space in the terrain. It's not necessarily being aggressive, which is, I think, the way we like to think of infections, if you will. It's actually just filling a void. The second node is the metabolic terrain, the fuel, essentially, where we're talking about the way we create energy, but also the way Candida creates energy. Being on the blood sugar roller coaster, which is just so common in the standard American diet, is like leaving the pantry door open for Candida to overgrow. High glucose, frequent carb crashes, peaks and valleys, insulin spikes, all of these are different signals to Candida to shift into their more invasive behavior. And it's easy to miss that cravings aren't really a willpower issue oftentimes. They are a signal from these gut bugs inside of our microbiome that are growing out of balance, that the fuel system is unstable. So again, here comes a symptom that we can really read as a deeper clue. And the third important node is immune surveillance and resilience. Your mucosal immune system is imperative. Not only does that include what's going on in the large intestine and small intestine, but we're talking about the respiratory and digestive tracts at large. These mucous membranes contain what's called secretory IgA. You can think of this as the bouncers that help us to recognize self and non-self and really promote balance and safety in the environment of the gut mucosa. The stronger these bouncers are inside of the gut mucosa, the stronger our immune resilience is. And they play a huge role in keeping these potential opportunistic organisms like Candida in check. But when you're under chronic stress, or you're sleeping poorly or interrupted, your mucosal defenses actually drop. There's a direct relationship between stress like cortisol and the decrease of secretory IgA. And that's when Candida essentially gets the permission to become invasive once again. So you can see how all three of those nodes represent a different perspective of how they leave the door open for Candida to overgrow. If you just fix one in isolation and the other two keep pulling you backwards, the number one mistake that I see is someone gets a diagnosis when Candida might be cultured in stool or otherwise, and they jump straight into the antifungals without any consideration to either of these three nodes. And then they wonder why it comes back 3 months later. So just like chasing the mold in the wall with bleach, doing the same thing with Candida is just going to lead to disappointment. Now, when it comes to addressing these three nodes, there are three phases that I typically see work well for most cases. There's no black and white, but this is the order that I see helps the most. The first phase is to stabilize the triangle. This is foundational work, and many are surprised when they learn that they're not going to be on antimicrobials yet. You're oftentimes strengthening things like the metabolic terrain to create the signal of safety to the systems. So it's important to not skip this stability phase. Multiple studies also confirm that elevated glucose or blood sugar, even within normal lab ranges of the conventional labs like HbA1c or fasting glucose, shifts Candida from its yeast form to the more invasive hyphal form. So metabolic stability is incredibly important here. You're not just managing symptoms, you're changing the signaling environment Candida responds to. Phase 2 is to target and disrupt. Only after we have stabilized the three nodes in the first phase do you start to introduce something like an antifungal. It can be herbal or pharmaceutical, but another key here is to pair antimicrobials with what's called biofilm disruptors. Biofilms are like protective mucus coatings that these organisms like Candida hide under. Research on biofilms shows that organisms that are sheltered inside of this biofilm are significantly harder to clear with antimicrobials alone. And when biofilm disrupting agents are paired with these antimicrobials, then they're able to get into the tissues deeply and improve more predictably. So if you've used antifungals before, whether herbal or prescription, and it only half worked or it came back, biofilms likely played a huge role. If you're liking this discussion on the Candida Triangle and you appreciate the research, I've pulled together some easy to digest research summaries into a freebie that you can download. Just snag it below. It's in the description and in the pinned comment. And after phase 2, this is critical because we've gone in with some antimicrobials, and even if it's herbal, it still has the potential to disrupt the good bacteria and good yeasts in the gut. So we're going to then replenish or reinoculate with beneficial bacteria. This includes focusing on plant-based diversity in your diet, maybe some targeted prebiotics and probiotics, and of course those fermented foods are one of the most powerful ways to actually influence the interior of our gut microbiome. These three phases, the order matters greatly. If you reverse it, you start with a weaker foundation every time. If we think of each of the nodes on this triangle as a checkpoint, then Candida has three different opportunities: the immune work, the metabolic work, or the gut health work to slip through the cracks essentially and be allowed to overgrow. Most of my clients light up in two or all three of the sections, to be honest, and that's normal because, again, we're complex interconnected systems. But usually there's one that does stand out that needs the most support from the get-go. That's where our strategic leverage lives. Now, you might be wondering, should I test? How much testing do I need? Do we need insight into all of these systems? And my rule is to really measure what changes the decisions. So instead of starting with a blanket protocol, I start with deep questions and understanding of your personal health history. That's what allows us to be strategic and not throw the whole kitchen sink when it comes to testing. The first test I like to utilize is a comprehensive microbiome analysis. This can help to find Candida in some cases, although it is notoriously difficult to culture in a stool sample. But it also gives insight into the terrain at large. Do we have enough of the good bacteria to be crowding out the opportunity for Candida to overgrow, for instance? And what are the digestive health markers like underneath as well, which we didn't talk about much, but also play a huge role into Candida overgrowth. Think low stomach acid, for instance. Second is an organic acids test. An organic acids test gives us great insight into early carb metabolism or blood sugar balance, as well as some of the metabolites of some common yeasts like Candida. So if you can't culture for it in the stool, this is often a great example of how we can use metabolites or the byproducts of these organisms to test and try to quantify their presence. And third is a hormone panel. And I like to expand this to cortisol rhythms as well, because that gives us phenomenal insight into your immune resilience, your stress resilience, and also the gut immune connection. I always say when you can define something, you can deal with something, and data is what really allows us to do that. And you don't need to wait to start addressing the Candida Triangle. Here's what you can do this week. I'm not going to talk about any supplements, just the terrain and supporting the systems. When it comes to the metabolic node, front load your protein early in the morning. Think eggs for breakfast or yogurt or something similar, because protein helps to stabilize blood sugar, and it also becomes the reparative factors if there are any imbalances or deficiencies. Also, taking 10-minute walks after your meals can be a really great way to stabilize blood sugar, and simply moving more throughout the day. Take your micro breaks if you're a 9-to-5er. For the immune node, focusing on sleep as a non-negotiable is really foundational. That 7 to 9 hour window of quality sleep. Use a fitness tracker or sleep tracker at night to help understand, are you truly resting? Because rest is where the immune system truly rebuilds. And then consider the mind-body connection too. I'm a huge fan of counseling, breathwork, and other somatic practices as well to tie the physical, mental, emotional all together. And for the microbiome, add one new plant food every day. I shoot for about 30 different plants per week in my diet. It's hard to do sometimes, but that's a really great goal. This includes vegetables, herbs, nuts, seeds, things like that, because your microbiome responds to diversity. And then if you tolerate it, consider adding some fermented foods. But start small, because your system will tell you if it's too much. This is your foundation. Everything else builds on this. So here's the one thing I want you to take away. Candida is the signal, not the problem itself. When you fix these systems, your microbiome, your metabolic health, or your immune resilience, you provide the environment for balance. Here's a couple quick questions I get. The first is, can I just do the diet and then skip the rest? Diet can help. An anti-Candida diet is usually a low sugar, low fruit type diet. But without the immune and microbiome work at large, relapse risk still remains quite high. And the next question is, do I need a million tests? The answer is no, and I would say it also depends on the complexity of the case and what systems are likely involved. Because we are interconnected beings, it's important to work with somebody strategically to pick the tests that actually might move the needle the most for your unique case of Candida. Now that you've learned a bit about the Candida Triangle, here's what most people get stuck on the most. I always like to draw special attention to stress, and in this video I go over the 12 hidden stressors that many of us are not perceiving in contemporary society. If you like today's video, go ahead and subscribe as well. I'm Dr. Kenny Mittelstadt, Root Cause Health Detective. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.